Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of IDTALK4ED Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I welcome you and hope that today's episode is one that will have you coming back for more. And if you're a returning listener or viewer of the podcast, as always, I welcome you back and hope that today's episode is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get into the main event, listeners, if you are watching from YouTube, please make sure you hit that red subscribe button so you can get future notifications on new episodes. If you are listening from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe there as well. And for folks that want to help donate to this platform and help us continue to make it grow, there are 4 ways in which you can do that. The first is through Cash App, using our handle $IDTALK4ED. Second is with Venmo, with our handle @Kwame SM. That's KWAMESM. And then through PayPal, through our URL, paypal.me/KwameSM. And then for our day ones, the people that have been through this journey with us from 2019 onwards, maybe you came in the middle of the journey, does not matter. If you have benefited greatly from the content we've given you through this podcast and other Identity Talk programming, please consider being a forum member. This is our new exclusive membership space for the Identity Talk community. Over there, you'll receive behind the scenes footage of the podcast. You'll get some early access to new episodes, some bonus episodes as well. And you'll get discounts on Identity Talk merch and books and our other programming. So if you would like to learn more about the membership tiers for the forum, please go to our main website at IDTALK4EDucators.com. Now for my readers, you want to add a book to your library that's going to help you strengthen your instructional practice? Please consider getting Learn to Relearn, Supporting Identity in the Culture Forming Classroom. It is the latest offering that I'm giving to the world, and we are approaching the 1-year anniversary of the book's release. So if you still have not purchased a copy of this book, please go to the website at learntorelearn.com to not only learn more about what's in this book, but also to get your copy from there. You could also go to my publisher at Routledge and get the copy directly there, or all other online book retailer platforms where they do sell books. And if you're someone that has a copy and you love what you read, please consider leaving a 5-star review on Amazon or Goodreads. The reviews help to increase the visibility of the book. So whenever you are able to share how the book has impacted you in your practice, you are giving people a reason to want to buy a copy of it. So please support in that way. And for those who have been doing that, thank you so much. It means the world. All right, y'all. So we're about to start a new episode with a brand new guest. And this person is a personal friend of mine, someone who I had a chance to connect with here in Zambia. She has since moved on to Malaysia with her family, and she is doing some phenomenal work in the realm of organizational leadership and helping businesses operate in a more efficient fashion. And she is somebody who's just phenomenal and continues to just amaze me. And I hope she'll amaze you with her story. So without further ado, I want to bring on Dr. Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh to the podcast to share her story and how she's been able to grow being a trailing spouse in the foreign service space, just like me. So let's bring Jaymee on to share her story. Hey, Jaymee.
Hi, Kwame. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How you feeling?
Good. I'm feeling great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, of course. This is easy. This is like
It is.
chatting on the phone with you. So I'm
This is
excited.
true.
So, I mean, I know a little bit about you, but a lot of our followers and viewers are probably wondering, like, who is Dr. Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh? Like, why should I even want to get to know her? Well, this is your chance to share that story. So, yeah. So, we always like to start from the beginning. So, I know for you, you grew up in the Chicago.
Yes. Proud
What?
Chicagoan.
Yep. So, what part? South side,
South side,
west
always.
side, south
Far South
side. Okay.
side, the hundreds. Yes.
Oh wait, the hundreds. All right, that's kind of where my family is. They're near the Roseland area.
That's the neighborhood I grew up in.
All right, so my family's pretty close. They're I think on I don't know 112th, and I want to say Halstead,
Yeah.
something like
So
that.
right down the street. ten I grew up about 10 blocks from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, went to Morgan Park High School back in the
All right.
day. And I'm
Yeah.
a South Side girl, so no matter where I go, how far I go, I'm always representing hard for Chicago.
Uh, that's what's up. So listen, you a doctor and you spent a lot of years in academia. So while you may not be a K-12, I mean, you do a lot of work with college students and people in that realm, which more than counts. So I just want to find out from you who or what inspired you to even want to go down this route of education.
My first job was as a teaching assistant. I was 15 years old, and that was, I don't know if things have changed, but at that time you could have a permit and you could get a job through the city. And that was my first W-2 job, where I was able to support a summer school teacher. So I was taking attendance and I was helping to do some grading and keeping the class organized, and just having some connection with my peers. And that was really the part where I said, okay, I like this. I like connecting with people. I like supporting people in that way. And I got to do a little bit of tutoring. So later on in my career, not career, when I was a young person, I was doing that tutoring in different spaces. And then it turned into a lot more over the years. But I would say that's where it really started. I was able to see people who were really passionate about teaching through my K through 12 experience. They invested a lot and wanted to make sure that we succeeded. And, everything up to, I think sixth or seventh grade was really the foundation of seeing the inequities in schooling. And so by the time I got to seventh grade and beyond, that was where I could start to apply some of the thinking around how is this going to look different for me as a person and as a student in this system.
All right. And going to school in Chicago
Yeah.
during those K-12 years, were there any personal struggles you had as far as embracing who you were and being able to show up authentically in school and beyond?
I feel like everyone has their story. Everyone
Sure.
has that story where whether it's a moment or it's something that spans a little longer, where they're talking about what it means for them to show up and to navigate those struggles. For me, I went to schools that were predominantly Black. But my challenge was that I was showing up being very culturally Belizean. My family is from Belize, small country in Central America. And there was a lot that in that environment, between the home community and the school community, that was telling me that I wasn't Black enough. So that was a big mark of my experience as I was navigating schooling, was what does it mean to be Black? What does it mean to show up as an African American and a Belizean American, while having these cultural expectations that might look a little bit different from some, and yet there's still this interculturalism that happens, and a lot of shared stories and a lot of shared community between the cultures as well. So navigating that in my younger years, it was really about figuring out how I show up, how I have a strong sense of self and who I am, and being able to take that into whatever I do. And so I'm very grateful to have come from a home community where education was heavily pushed. You talked about, I've done a lot of schooling. And And it's true.
Yeah.
My schooling, it came from this piece where you push for excellence in everything that you do. And if anyone is
Right.
familiar with immigrant families have a big focus on making sure that you pursue education in whatever way that looks like for you.
You ain't never lie.
Yeah, you know.
Oh, I know. I know for sure. But
Yeah.
listen, if I'm not mistaken, you may have mentioned this to me in a previous conversation we've had, but you were in some gifted programs, were you, during your K to
Yeah.
12? So I'm wondering, how did that layer impact your relationships with other Black students? Because
Yeah.
sometimes when you find yourself in that gifted and talented program, people like to think that by being in that space, you're more adjacent to whiteness as opposed to being like blackity black. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if you ever experienced that type of resentment from other Black folk you were going to school with.
Yeah. So you're correct. I was in what was called the academic center. So you
Okay.
started in seventh and eighth grade in a high school environment. Still some separation, but there was also an opportunity for you to take classes with the high school students and really elevate yourself in that way. So the school as an entity was seventh through 12th grade, but a high
Okay.
school. Then once I got into ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, I was still at that school in a pre-IB program and then into the full IB program, IB being the International Baccalaureate program. A lot of people overseas know about it, right? But it's often a shock when people find out that I was in that program in the United States. Um, I would say going into seventh grade, that was the first time that this concept of Black excellence moved from inside my home, right? I was reading Alex Haley and Alice Walker
Mm-hmm.
and Langston Hughes because those were the books that we had in our home. But Black excellence moved from inside my home to outside of my home. And I was no longer, the smartest kid in the class or one of the smartest kids in the class. I was amongst many smart Black children. And, those programs were majority Black because it was still on the south side of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was eye-opening for me to see these kids who had just intellect in so many different ways. And you see it now. They're business owners and they're academics and they're entrepreneurs. I mean, they're doing incredibly well in the work that they do. And that was because we had the opportunity to have this small community, right? Academic Center was a cohort, if you think about it that way. IB tends to
Okay.
be a cohort. So if you have a school of 2,300 students, but you're going through your experience with about 30, it makes for a very different lived experience. And it gave me a lot to appreciate. So that helped to ground my foundation in my Blackness and really affirm it. Yeah.
That's what's up. So is the academic center still going on today?
I hope so. I'm not sure, but I haven't heard that it's not. I do hope so because that program has that high school readiness, but
Okay.
there were so many things that were just different than this standard curriculum that's taught in a
Mm-hmm.
lot of schools, right? This idea of teaching to pass tests with the academic center, it's teaching to be able to engage in big thought. It's teaching to be able to ask questions. It's teaching to be able to engage in group settings.
Mm-hmm.
It's teaching for holistic learning. That's where I got involved in marching band, in concert band. So that program I really do hope is continuing, as well as the IB program at the school.
For sure. Because I have a nephew who goes to Edgar Allan Poe School, which is
Yeah.
a magnet school in CPS. I'm sorry, Chicago Public Schools. So he's that type of student, very
Yeah.
high achieving, super duper smart. Uh, I feel like that is a program that he would greatly benefit from. So I'd have to share that with my sister.
Yeah. And, those programs you test into. I don't know all the intricacies. I would say shout out to my mom for, again, really forcing and promoting and encouraging and loving on education as a strong foundation. But that's how myself and my brother both were able to be in those programs, was testing in. So there is a bit of a process, but it allows you to have a different opportunity, especially if maybe your neighborhood school isn't the greatest or isn't performing as well as you would like for it to be.
Eventually, you
Yeah.
get to college and you end up having some experiences that led you to want to help other students who have gone through that process of college. So I'm wondering, what was it about your college experience that led you to want to be in the academia space where you're helping out students navigate that stage of life?
There's this whole other world, this student affairs world, student affairs or student services, depending on the institution, that people don't necessarily know about in the
Yeah.
university space. This space has so many functions to just make sure that college students are developing as holistic learners, as global citizens, all of the things, right? And when I first got to school, a story we've heard before, I didn't have any money. I mean, I was hungry. I was commuting an hour and a half to school one way every day. And it was figure it out, and you have
Wow.
family members where it's like, I don't know what it is, but I know it might be there. So ask
Yeah.
questions and figure it out. And that's where I got involved with these peer mentoring programs for first generation college students and low income students and, people who were first generation American like myself. There were these spaces that were protective of us because they wanted to see us succeed. So I got involved and I followed up with my peer mentor. I became one later on. I got involved with the Black Student Union and I got involved with different organizations. And then I, got jobs on campus in the Dean of Students office. I ended up working in a Dean of Students office later in my career. And so all those experiences, I think, really supported me just wanting to continue to give back. Because when you see there are spaces and people, I can name the people, right? These people who were so passionate about our success, you can't help but get attracted to wanting to do the same. And I always knew I had a propensity to be with people and support people and push people. For better or worse, when I was a kid, I was always pushing people. So it was, how can we be better? How can we be more and reach our goals? And I've always surrounded myself with people who are goal oriented, and it's just worked out. But I think this passion of being an educator is a special place. You have to love people. You have to love growth potential, right?
Yes.
And this human perspective and this interpersonal connection that you can have with a person. You have to be able to have that empathy to understand that every person is an individual and they're navigating their life in the best ways they know how. You have to have this, bit of influence to you, right? Where people are drawn to you and connect with you. I mean, you were teaching and math and people, I'm sure you were the cool teacher.
I was actually. I actually
there
was.
you go. Yeah, the cool teacher, the person that can make math fun because you just have people drawn to you and your personality and this human approach to who you are. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about. I know, going back to my own college experience, we had student affairs, we had a student services department that provided that assistance. But usually what happens is you go through your freshman year and they kind of like front load those services during that
True.
year. And then after that, it's like you don't see them again. They're around, but they're not as proactive in terms of intervening and checking in on you, because they feel like once you've kind of gone through that freshman year, you're all set. You can kind of be more autonomous. But that's not the case for everybody. I think for me, I had to look for my own work study jobs.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a good one that ultimately led me to this field that I'm in today. but it wasn't the case where someone said, "Oh, go to this office or go here." Like I had to kind of do my own research, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of people who are in that same predicament.
I just had to respond to emails. Yeah, but it's true that there was a concerted effort in the field for a long time around the sophomore experience. Even
Mm-hmm.
I worked in career services, and there was um, some focus on curriculum to support students from year 1, 2, 3, 4, 4+, right? And how are we not just focusing on first year students and their experience when they come in and talking about and starting to develop a resume, but how are we talking about year 2 and getting involved with mock interviews, and then year 3 and actually having internships in year 4, right? Building that out
Oh,
as
that went
another
deep.
part of the experience. Yeah. So a lot of schools have been doing that work, and it's not perfect and it's not everyone, but a
Yeah.
lot of schools have moved towards that because of exactly what you just said, where their outreach is hard that first year. But sometimes you're just trying to, you're the duck. You're just trying to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe you figured out some things sophomore year that you're now able to take in and digest all of the information that comes to you that can be of support.
Do you believe that this current era of Gen Z has changed the culture of college in terms of the programming that we do provide? Because there's so much information out there now
Yeah.
that is available to them
Yeah.
that I would assume it would change the way that colleges approach that orientation process for students of this era.
Absolutely. I mean, student services or the academic side,
Yeah.
it has changed both. Think about
Mm-hmm.
the ways in which you even bring students on, how you attract students. It's changed from just having the website and people having that know-how or people Googling. It's now schools having Instagrams and TikToks and other accounts and doing creation and creating content to really attract students. I think the positives of that, though, is schools have to have a strong sense of their own identity of who they are. There are some
Mm-hmm.
schools who really do it well. They understand their traditions and their cultural values. And students know the school song and proudly wear the colors during football games. And then there are other schools who said, how do we become attractive to prospective students? So I think that's definitely one way it's changed. We absolutely know that in the world of AI, academia has had some way to maneuver in different ways. They have
That's
to be
right.
able to think about how do we work with this current, I wouldn't even call it a trend, but this existence of generative AI and AI as a tool to be able to work with that to engage students in the classroom in different and meaningful ways. So it's absolutely changed with this generation, but same thing happened with my generation and yours as millennials,
Yes,
right?
sir.
It's we're the generation that, we had computers at a point, and being able to shift from go to the library, just use the hardcover encyclopedias to we can look things up on Google by the
Mm-hmm.
time we were in college, right? So those things have shifted. And that's going to continue to be a trend from generation to generation. And the more that we're able to adapt to it, the better. But universities are no stranger to adapting to change across
Right.
generations. They're adapting to change every several years. I mean, every 4 years, students are coming in and out, but every year they're graduating classes. So they're
Mm-hmm.
adept to adapting.
And I wanted to say thank you for even taking on the role of being an RD, right? Because I can remember my freshman sophomore years, we had RAs who we gave
Yeah.
hell.
Yep.
You had, I mean, I was a good kid. Like I wasn't making noises or things like that, but you had people in my hall or
Yeah.
on my floor, they throwing parties.
Yeah.
They having some other extracurricular activity taking place, which is
Absolutely.
making lots of noises and people can hear at night. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So there's a lot going on that RAs had to navigate. So it's a thankless job because when you're an
Yes.
RA, you got to sacrifice party time. You got to
Yeah.
stay back and make sure that everybody else is on their good behavior. You got to
Yeah.
hold floor meetings. it's yeah, it's like babysitting. I don't
Yeah.
want to limit it to that. There's more to it, but it
Yes.
feels like sometimes you got to babysit some grown kids, you know?
Absolutely. Because that maturation process of college students, I loved it. You are watching young people who have independence really figure out what that independence looks like in real time. And like you
That's
said,
right.
I could write a book on the experiences that you see in residence halls. And I hope somebody out there who's been an RA or an RD, a resident director, has, because you see it all. You see people figure out their limits with drugs and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. You see people learn their limits as it relates to dating, right? Relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You
That's
see
right.
people figure out what it means when they're on the brink of being expelled from school.
Mm-hmm.
And those conversations, and kind of going back to what I talked about with being an educator, you have to have that ability to understand people and to connect with them on a very human level, because some people would come and say, you must think I'm a horrible person. I was like, absolutely not.
Mm-mm.
The choices
No.
that you make as you're learning and growing are choices. But do I think you are a horrible person? Absolutely not. Right. And that's just what it is. Whether you're K through 12 or you're working in the higher education space, we're all working with young people just trying to figure out life.
So I want to fast forward because there's so much to cover
Yeah.
about your story. Let's talk about the academia space. So you had your share of RD positions and eventually you decided I want to pursue a doctorate. You made that bold move. And anybody that's pursued a doctorate, or is it a process of going through that process? I mean, my sister just completed her process and it took her a long time to get it done, but she got it done. So she graduated from University of Chicago a few months ago. So I'm thankful for that. But anyway, I want you to talk to me about the experience of being in that space as a Black woman, like having to deal with that intersectionality and how that informs the way that you even approach the space. So just kind of walk me through some of the ups and downs that you may have experienced during that time.
Yeah. So I like to think of my Blackness and my Black womanhood as my superpower.
Hmm.
There are not going to be a lot of us in academia.
Right.
Now, there are going to be more when you're a social scientist like myself, but there's still not going to be many. So for me, it was about figuring out how to do what I can in the way that I can, with the voice that I have, in the time that I have. You talked about your sister's experience and how it takes time. A doctorate takes time.
Hmm.
And I think the typical range is 5, 6, 7 years. I completed mine in 4 while working full time, because what was in my control was that, right? I had a family, other responsibilities, and it was very important for me to make sure whatever I had in my control, I held on to that. Um, but my doctorate and what I did my research on is very close to my heart and really speaks to what my experience has been in academia, because I decided to focus on the ways in which Black women senior housing officers, so these women over these hundreds of millions of dollar um, multi-dwelling units at universities, these
Mm-hmm.
multi-million dollar budgets, how they thrive as these senior leaders at universities. And I wanted to do that because we know that there are challenges as it relates to Black women in leadership. But
Yes.
what we don't often study, and what actually wasn't studied, was the experience of how they thrive in their role. What makes them successful? What makes people listen to them? What makes them able to know that it can be challenging being a Black woman in academia and yet still do well and show up and speak out against resistance? And that was powerful work for me, to put my voice out there in paper. I wanted to make sure it was in my voice. So even my writing was, let's talk about it, right? Having that approach. These are educators as well. They're working with people, with young people, and people, a multi-generational kind of operation to what they do. And under this shared mission and vision that the university has and that the residential programs have. So for me, being able to see these women and how they do things powerfully, being able to have strong Black women mentors along my journey, even before my doctoral program and throughout, being able to have had supervisors who were Black women, not all the time, but occasionally, or me seeking that out has been a defining moment and really created ups. So even when maybe I didn't get a particular award, or I didn't get a program proposal accepted for a conference, or whatever it is, I was always armed and ready to, one, look forward and say there's something else next coming, and two, to not be stuck in that place, feeling like, where do I go from here? Because I always knew that there was something else that I could be looking at. And so I try and take a very optimistic approach to my experience in academia. And it has supported my mental health, right? It's not always up. Sometimes it's down, especially when you're navigating that type of space at predominantly white institutions. But having people that I could look to, whether they were at the institution or elsewhere, people that I can call actual mentors in my life, Black women, has helped me understand my superpower and be able to know that I can look forward into whatever is next and not dwell on what has not been for me.
Yeah, and I think it's very much evident in the work you've done around just Title IX, which is all about ladies, all about equity and ensuring that there is an equitable playing field. And it's still something that we're working on even to this day. Like, we are still trying to figure this puzzle out and try to get it to where it's more of a level playing field. But
We
you
are
out here
still
doing
trying
this
to
work.
figure it out.
I know. Exactly. And it's kind of like disheartening because we should have to be in this process of figuring it out. It should have been figured out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But here we are.
But here we are. It takes people time. And I shout out to the warriors who work in those spaces, who are doing the type of work to move equity forward in whatever fashion that looks like. Because unfortunately, we are still in spaces where there have to be regulations and mandates and laws and such to let people know that this is an expectation that we should have as a human race.
Yes, for sure. So you've gone through this phase of, being a resident director, helping out resident assistants, supporting students at the college level, doing your work and supporting Black women and other women from other backgrounds. And now you find yourself abroad.
Yeah.
In a different role as a trailing spouse in this foreign service space, which is very different. But you were able to find your groove working as American Spaces director here at the embassy in Zambia. And that's how we connected. So I would love for you to just share, how did that help you to grow professionally, but also personally? Because there had to have been a transition and learning curve for you.
Yeah. I like things that have a bit of challenge to them. For me, I would always tell people that my work in higher education was always dealing with the difficult experiences that college students go through. I like to work with people through challenges. Anything that I do, I want to know, what goal are you trying to meet, or how driven are you to get here, or, how can you meet this particular objective? How can we help you get there? And that's always been a constant thread, is working with people through challenges in their life. So when I got to Zambia, it was, how do I find a space that allows me to have the dynamics of the workspace that I like, right? I know what I like in a workplace. And it was working in that particular area. I have always worked with teams. So if we talk about my career path, we're talking about me transitioning from one particular space in higher education under student services, student affairs, and then switching over to another division within the university, and then switching over to another function within the university, completely different. But then switching out of that and going into small corporate environments, and then switching over into government work. And all of those entities, all of those spaces function very differently. So for me to be able to navigate across the board, it takes that adaptability. It takes that understanding that you don't understand everything, but you can learn it. It takes me being able to listen to people and talk to people and be adaptable in those spaces to understand where I can fit in. But one thing I never doubt is how I can contribute. I've worked with teams, 30 plus people, teams that were 4 people, depending on the objective, right, and the need of that space. And we're talking about teams with very specific purposes. And anytime you're working in those spaces, people need to understand why we're there. People need to understand their value and the way that they can contribute to the space. People need to understand what the end goal is and what they understand their role to be in pursuing that. There needs to be opportunities for people to connect. There needs to be opportunities for people to understand who is the lead, right? And what that person's style is, or pedagogical approach or philosophy is, and how they're moving the team forward. There's a lot that happens in those spaces, but those are areas where no matter what industry or unit I worked in, I could always be that thread, and I could always provide that perspective and really keep us moving forward.
And I think that's important. And I can honestly say you have certainly left your impact with the folks here in Zambia. Even to this day, they still talk about you. They still
Oh
do.
my gosh.
People outside the embassy. Oh, you know Dr. Jaymee? Oh, tell us hi. I was like, yeah. So
They're fun. I mean, once I learned, I had my bumps, right? We all do, and we have to own
oh
them.
yeah, sure.
I was like, I have to say good morning to everyone every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see them again, and I have to say good afternoon, right? I was like, whew, this is a lot. And now it's one of the things that I love and appreciate so much about that space. And I'm in a new space, and I'm like, we need to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Why are we not doing that, right? Because there's beauty in the connection of that. And that is something I picked up there. So I also have to let that community know that they have given me a lot to take away as well.
And I have this question that's going to lead to the bigger questions, because we are going to talk about ElevateCore in a second. But given your experience here in Zambia and also in other institutions you've been a part of within academia, I want to get your perspective on leadership. How do you believe leaders should think about the interplay of clarity, culture, and connection? Number one, and where do you see most organizations struggle with that intersection?
I think first leaders just need to acknowledge that there is an interplay, right?
Okay.
So if we're talking about clarity, connection, and culture, they play hand in hand. So I was
That's
talking
right.
about the fundamentals of building a team, right? The start. That's that clarity that I just shared, making sure that people understand why they're there, what the general function is, moving that forward. The culture is everything that people are bringing into that space, but it's also then what are you going to create within that space that allows everybody to feel like equal contributors? The connection is how are they going to be working together throughout the process? And so there really is an interplay that's incredibly important that you have to get to and you have to lay as a strong foundation before you even can move forward to the next steps. because trust is very important. People have to trust not just in your professional competencies and, you know, the skill sets that you're bringing to the conversation, but they have to trust that you are aligned. But they also have to trust that there's going to be accountability there, right? In positive, constructive ways. So I think first leaders do have to recognize the interplay of all of this and how it contributes to the greater good. Because how many times have we been in spaces where someone comes in and they maybe have an agenda, maybe not, and they lay it down and they say, okay, so we need to, for example, plan this. This is what we're doing. I need you to do this, this, and this. Okay, meeting done, right? People don't feel connected to that. People don't feel like they have a full understanding of how their work connects to the greater good. What we're doing when we're building teams is we're creating community for ourselves, for the client. That's what we're doing. And so it's very important that people first start off understanding that those concepts, clarity, culture, connection, are the foundation for what you're doing as a leader. And that is your role.
The 3 C's, love it. The 3 C's.
Yeah.
And we were able to have this conversation, and you actually let me know, like, hey, like, I got this grand idea for a business that I want to start. And I can remember us taking that walk, and you were just pouring into me about this idea. And I'm like, yeah, you got
Did you
something
feel my
here.
excitement?
Like you struck gold. You've definitely struck gold, especially with the previous experience you've had in Zambia. This is definitely going to be applicable to this new journey. So I want to talk about ElevateCore, which is where you are today. You got ElevateCore Consulting, which is focusing on a lot of issues that you've discovered in organizations, but also in leadership. So tell me, maybe it was before we had that walk and conversation, but when did you realize that this is something that you really wanted to pursue? And feel free to just share more information about ElevateCore and the gaps you're trying to fill in the market.
Absolutely. So ElevateCore is all about being able to build better teams at the foundation. Everyone is familiar with leadership as this big picture concept, but what we do is be able to focus on team leadership and team leaders. We want to make sure that people are not just doing good work, but they're doing good work together. So everything from working with multi-generational teams to how you structure one-on-one meetings, how you structure group meetings, how you develop things, concepts strategically, strategic planning, retreat building, all types of experiences that allow team leaders to be their best is what we focus on, because leadership training or leadership coaching alone focuses on the individual and the competencies that they can develop in order to enact and perform. We want to focus on the practical that allows you to think from beginning to end about how what you experience and who you are as a leader interplays, right, with how teams function that you oversee. I will say this has been a long time coming. I've been talking about it for quite a long time, years. And knowing that I had done, back in the day, it was resume editing, right? I'm an former English major, and I loved to edit resumes. I've edited resumes, I've edited dissertations, I've edited articles, all types of things. And it became a little side business for me. And so this idea of being able to just work with people in different ways and kind of coach them through experiences, right? Talking to them after the editing process was my favorite part. That was the piece of saying, okay, these are the things that I'm seeing. These are the patterns that I'm noticing. Have you noticed that? Do you know where that comes from? Have you thought about how you can implement this type of structure or pattern into what you're doing? Those are the spaces in which I would thrive. So when ElevateCore was coming about, I was thinking about this gap in what's happening. Everyone talks about the leader that they have that is not great. Everyone has a story about a supervisor who they maybe question how that person came into that experience. And we know that across industries, lots of people get promoted into positions of power, but are not necessarily trained to serve as a leader over the people that they supervise. And then there's, further breakdown, and I won't bore you, but the idea of supervision versus management and how those are two different competencies that you're practicing. All of that was something that I really focused in on, because throughout my career, I was always supervising. I was always working with teams, and I had people who were smarter than me, who knew more than me, that I was working with. I've had people on my teams who were much older than me, much younger than me. I've had people who have come from different disciplines, different backgrounds. Some people may be strategic or analytical or logical thinkers. Some people may be more rooted in interpersonal relationships and emotional logic, and different ways in which you have to maneuver through those spaces. But that's really how I said this is a space and a particular niche that I wanted to focus in on. And it's been going really well. The people that I get to work with are excited about the work, and that makes me continue to be excited.
And when you're mentioning the management versus supervision piece, it got me thinking about the current consulting work I'm doing with the school, because I feel like I've been seeing a lot of supervision but not enough management, where you are really centering relationship building and really focusing around the connection that you're having between the people you're trying to support. And you tend to see management and supervision, I think they're used interchangeably, when they're really, while there's parallels, they're two different things.
Absolutely. They are two different things. And knowing what your role is when you step into that position of leadership is important. You should know that beforehand, right? Is this a manager position? Does the job description say manager, but they're really looking for someone who has that supervision focus and that one-on-one or interpersonal approach to it, and understanding how you show up in a space. Myself as a Black woman, I have always needed to understand how I show up when I am interacting with someone who's across the table from me. Everybody has to do that work to understand who you are and how you show up in a space full of other people. And that's allowed me to learn, because one of my top strengths, if you follow Strengths Finder, is always command. Okay, so look it up. But always having that presence and knowing when to pull that back, whether it's verbally or it's my body language, so that it allows people space to enter a conversation.
Yes, that awareness is key. You have to have that awareness. So as we're approaching the top of the hour, I want to wrap up with a couple more questions still on ElevateCore. I want to manifest some things right now. As you look ahead, what's your vision for ElevateCore over the next, say, 5 years, maybe even beyond that?
Absolutely. My vision for where we go in the future is for the work of teams to be spread, right? Building people and really creating pipelines for people to come into leadership in this particular area, to be coaching other people on how to build better teams and how to be better teammates and how to be better team leaders. And part of that is going to look like us being in different places and leading people in culturally competent ways in order to do that work. I see us being incredibly successful in the work that we're doing, and I look forward to what's to come.
Amazing. But Jaymee, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to learn even more about you. There are some things that you shared today that I never knew. So it's good to know that. So to wrap things up, this is a question I like to ask everybody on this podcast. How do you stay true to the teacher in you?
Once an educator, always an educator. I'm going to show up being the person who is listening and sharing. I am going to be the person who is taking opportunities for people to stretch and grow. I am going to be the person who is sharing knowledge, and whether it's sending a follow-up email for people to dive in deeper, whether it's creating curriculum. Once you've written a lesson plan, you know how to really outline something for someone to follow.
That's right.
Yeah. And then once you've done a graduate student lesson plan, you absolutely know how to make sure that people are following a path towards their learning objectives. And what I do is I work in the space of personal learning objectives now. So it's the same fundamentals, and I take that with me into this work of making sure that there's clarity in the goal along the way, same way as teachers in the classroom develop. And then I'm executing to the best of my abilities with the educator in me.
Awesome. And please let people know how they can connect with you on social media. And also feel free to share the ElevateCore Consulting website if they want to learn more about your services.
Yeah, so if you'd like to connect with me, hope you do, on LinkedIn at Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh. My name will be in the information where you've accessed this podcast. But again, at Jaymee Lewis-Flenaugh. And then website is www.elevatecoreconsulting.com.
All right, y'all. Y'all heard it first from the good doc. Jaymee, thank you again for coming on. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
And for the listeners, thank you for tuning in to another episode of IDTALK4ED Educators Live. And as always, I wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. And we're going to do this again another time. Peace out, y'all.